To start the session, I would request Dr. Maria Grazia to take the session forward from here.
So good afternoon, colleagues. It's really a pleasure to have you here to talk about something that I think seemingly goes a bit tangent to the topic of the GPay. But as we move forward, you will see that actually, no, you should be starting thinking about this, because what we are going to talk today about is the developments that are happening at the crossroad between AI, which is the flavor of the day, and neurotechnology. Now, we are starting this discussion through a brief presentation of a report that we launched on the 13th of July in Paris. And actually, the Financial Times reported on this report, saying that what it is and what it means, the implications of putting neurotechnology on steroids, that is at the confluence between neurotechnology and AI. So, in order to understand what it is, what it means, and what are the implications, we are going to propose to you first a bit of an overview of where we stand. So what are we talking about by the time we talk about neurotechnology? What it matters, which kind of developments are ongoing, who is doing them, what can be the impact societal-wise, innovation-wise, production-wise, what are the investments that go into that? And last but not least, what are the ethical implications, that is, which kind of human rights, human dignity, and fundamental freedoms are going to be impacted by this. So this is work, that I've done together with Roman Jurozewski, that is here with me today, and Daniel Hain and Li Huixu. So, neurotechnology, I'm sorry, it is compressed, it doesn't read very well. So why it is important to talk about it? Because it is really about devices, procedure that can be used to access, to monitor, to investigate, to assess, or manipulate, or emulate the structure, and here we go, the function of the brains and the neural system of both animals and human beings. Evidently here we are more interested in what happens to people, but evidently it's on all living beings. And it is really something that may likely revolutionize the way in which we understand the brain. And of course, the good side of this is that it can unlock so many possibilities to treat, for instance, structural diseases or chronic diseases that today are hindering the life of millions. Let's not forget that we have about 15% of the world population that has some kind of discapacity, and many of them have also mental discapacities, in addition to people that have been injured, for instance, through traumas or for whatever other reason. Now, this is something that, even if it's not well explored, actually many governments are actively pursuing, as well as companies, as could be expected, because the possible applications are huge. As you can see from this picture, and we have done a calculation based on the available information, so this is a conservative estimate, there has been, since 2013, about $6 billion investment in neurotechnology only from the government. When it comes to the private sector, we see a 22-fold increase going from 2010 to 2020, reaching 7.3 billion for the last period, and totally, for what we know, again, so it's a conservative estimate, 33.2 billion by 2020. So we are talking about serious investment going there. Now, as I said, why are we discussing this today? Because we have observed, and we will share with you the results of this, that there is an accelerating convergence of artificial intelligence with neurotechnologies, both invasive and non-invasive. Let's not forget that by the time we talk about neurotechnology, I don't have a picture like the one I showed today about the jobs, but we typically think about something that goes in our brain physically, like the chips entering. Well, neurotechnology has gone well beyond that stage. And you can capture a number of things through cameras or other type of sensors, depending on the kind of input you want to register. And that's a constant registering. So we are really talking about something different already. And this is why we have evidence, and we will show you and discuss the implications, that AI and neurotechnology actually complement each other. And why? Because AI is giving neurotechnological data, neurotechnology collected through data, the ability of being analyzed, being understood, to transform that into thoughts, into ideas, into manifestations, so in concrete implications. And this is why we think then the neurotech, on the other hand, actually provides insight also about human cognition, beliefs, fears, symptoms, sharing or not a certain point of view. And therefore, that then it can inform AI developments because, as you know, one of the key topics inside AI is neural networks. And guess what? It is built on the way the brain functions. So that's the communality, even in the wording, which goes well beyond by the time you look at the applications. So this is the challenge, and we see whether it's going to work. So here on the left-hand side, you can really see what is the image that people view. And this is a study that actually tried to understand what we are able to decode by the time we have neural data used. And you see that the difference between what is actually perceived and what the machine records, thanks to the AI interpretation, to be what is pursued, is very close to reality. It differs very slightly. So we have gone to the point where neurotech giants are exploring the neurotech applications that go together with AI, and they are getting a representation of the reality that we experience, which gets very, very close to what is the real experience that individuals are getting. So we will go later to the challenges, but let's also talk about the opportunities, because there are huge opportunities here. And it is not only to fix problems, but already that, would suffice to say, let's invest in it. Think about people that cannot walk anymore, and thanks to neurotechnology, together with AI, are actually able to walk back, or cannot hear, or cannot see. But there are also applications that are non-trivial and are large-scale applications, like enhancing cognitive abilities. Now, while this is fantastic as a possibility, and here you have, different type of applications that are the ones that we observe very often, you have to think of what are the challenges that this brings, because it also depends on the access to technology, and this is a point we will come back to later. Who develops them? How costly they are? How can you access them? Because this determines, and what is the impact? Because imagine that you use, or I listen to myself, which is not the best option there, but there is an echo. I am echoing myself. But imagine that this is applied to people that have cognitive deficiencies. So it's indeed an increase in the ability of these people. So it's a very welcome development. But this can also be used for the very, very skilled one to further enhance their cognitive ability compared to the rest, which means then also putting yourself, trying to put agents in a dominant position depending on access to technology or replicability or the ability or not to stop it. So there are several implications there. And this actually translates into a number of real concerns. Into concept, there is a paper that has been produced by the expert group at UNESCO that actually dwells into all the details of what already now appear to be the challenges that neurotechnology, especially when coupled with AI, is posing to a number of human rights and human dignity related issues that we have. Mental integrity. Suppose, because of neurotechnology, and this is feasible, I'm not able anymore to hide what I really think about a person. Imagine what this can have in terms of consequences in a negotiation between countries. Imagine that your president can actually see what the other one is thinking, and so imagine how the conversation can go or might not go. Human dignity, because you might be able to picture ideas that you would never disclose with anybody, but the neurotechnology coupled with AI will disclose. Personal identity. This is very, for instance, imagine in terms of people of other gender that they don't want to disclose their own gender, and basically neurotech associated with AI forces them to. Autonomy, privacy, the ability to decide, the ability to do what you really want to without being influenced. And of course, I mentioned already the enhancement purposes that are also related to the accessibility. Who can get access to these technologies, which is a problem similar to those of very expensive drugs nevertheless. So what is the right I have, what are the duties, and who can access them? Now, here what we do in this report that you can scan here and get directly is we want to understand what we are talking about, because too often solutions come before the definition of the problem. And this is wrong, because then regulations get wrong. So you risk to over-regulate or regulate the wrong thing. So what we put as a first step towards then discussing what now countries have asked UNESCO to do, that is to embark on a recommendation on the ethics of neurotechnology, is to understand what do we talk about by the time we talk about neurotechnology, identifying and quantifying the trends with neurotechnology-related patents, and also we establish a patent-based classification with all the limits that patents might have as a proxies for innovation that can allow other studies to flourish on the very topic, being comparable across countries and over time. And here I ask my colleague Roman to take over about the methodology that we followed in the study.
Thank you so much, Maria Grazia, for introducing the topic, and I hope you're kind of intrigued by all of this, because it is indeed slightly different from some of the other sessions, and I feel also a little bit it's like maybe 3-4 years ago when we talked about AI and the risk, and yes, there were some cases, someone knew something, it was always the three same examples that were quoted, and then, you know, ChatGPT happened, it got mainstream, and suddenly it's exploded. And I have a little bit now, having studied this for a while, a feeling that there will be this pivotal moment, maybe not so far in the future. So maybe 1.5-2 years from now, it will become mainstream, and suddenly more people will talk about it. So you are the kind of people that are informed up front. So about the methodology, and please bear with me, it's slightly technical, but I'll try to make it understandable. So what we try to do here really is finding this needle in the haystack. We have today a total of around 118 million individual patents out there total. Of those, we only look at 30 million. This is the IP5, so that means the patent that in the same time are filed in all the major patent offices, the 5 big ones, meaning that they have quite a value for the company or organization filing them. So what do we do? The issue is there is not such a thing as a neurotechnology patent. You cannot like search in the database, give me the neurotechnology patent, because there is not such a category. So what we do is we go to the research area and we identify what is the most cited research within neuroscience. We segment it up using unsupervised machine learning techniques and then identify the topics that are neurotechnology related. So we use a combination of actually generative AI and human experts to determine that. We identify 109 topics in the research literature that can be related to neurotechnology. And then from there, we develop a semantic search engine, again, an AI application in itself, to search for patents that relate to these studies, these research studies. That gives us a total of around 12,000 patents. So it's I calculated before, 0.04%. So it's like, it's really, really small share, but still it's 12,000 patents that seemingly are this technology. We sub-segment it one more time to identify what applications are we looking at. And this is pretty much an automated process. So we don't search for keywords ourselves. And that was the idea there. And from there, we calculate patent statistics. I will show you some of the results in a second, but also dig deeper into the technology and try to understand what are actually the applications that we are talking about here. So if we look at the publications over time, we see both a cumulative and a per-year growth, an overall of 1.2 million neuroscience publications in 2021. Quite an exploding field, I would say. And this is the same for the patents. So, and actually, if you look at the patents, it's even more of a growth there. So 20-fold increase from less than 500 to over 12,000 in the cumulative counts. If you look from 2002 to 2020, and then you see the very steep increase for the yearly publications. If you look from 2000 to, especially from 2015 to 2020, and this is where we got a little bit of the sense like, what happened in 2015? Well, this was the time when machine learning technologies became more prominent. So we looked at the country distribution. That shows us a picture that's quite common to see, I would say, for emerging technologies, but 87%, 6 countries account together for 87% of the IP5 neurotech patents here. But then let's look at the core applications that should have been there. It was squashed a little bit, sorry for that. So if we zoom in, what are the core applications that we can see in these patents? Well, we have neuromodulation. This is clinical application of implants for people with certain conditions where they, for example, get an electrode that would maybe prevent a seizure from happening. We have the seizure prediction, right? So you actually read from the nervous tissue, and then you have an AI, well, machine learning algorithm, probably, or maybe even something more explainable and simpler than that, that just says predicts a seizure oncoming. We have brain-computer interfaces, for example, for limb rehabilitation. So people that have been involved in an accident cannot move, they get certain technologies that are attached to the body to support them, but also things like exoskeletons are part of that. But now we also see things like sleep optimization. So applications within this area, right? So people monitoring their sleeping patterns and what is going on there, optimizing this. But also brain performance assessment. And this is already an area where you can start asking yourself, wait a minute, where do we need it? Is this going to be used in the job market? Imagine a situation where you apply for a job and they say, oh, you need to take on this cab and we need to perform some tests on you. Could happen, we don't know, but it is definitely in the patents. And obviously advanced brain imaging, which is quite often a clinical application. So if we look at the technologies, again, and this is interesting, we see a lot of computer technologies according to the patent classification patterns being in there. So, you know, one could say, oh, it's only medical technology. No, a lot of computer technology. And in fact, and this is pretty much what we've seen also in the general number of increase, if we split it by the technologies, we see computer technology involvement in the patent has been on the rise. Okay? So there is some indication of this convergence happening. Now, we started looking at this convergence itself. And here we identified the very small, not so big sample of patents that explicitly say they combine AI technologies as defined by the patent classification systems. So there is like a few classes that explicitly say this is AI, this is machine learning, and there are some classes that always appear, or quite often appear, in neurotech. We looked at these combinations, we took this patent, and then we extrapolated from there. And this is what we got. It's around 1,500 patents. And if you kind of look through them, and this is a very, very preliminary recent work, we just started digging into that more explicitly, you will see things like method for characterizing, detecting, and monitoring ADHD. It is a patent that is out there. So, and just to give you a few more examples of that, to start a conversation, and I'm looking forward to discussion afterwards because, you know, maybe some of this will be also debunked. We have an expert on these technologies here, but this is what we see. You know, brain-computer interface for augmented reality. So someone is looking into that and spent money on filing a patent. And this is actually, those are granted patents. So this is not only filed patents, those here on this list are patents that have been granted. System and method for brain state classification is a technology out there that a company could start selling tomorrow. A method and device of brain-computer interface with adversarial learning. It's a Korean patent in the sample. Artificial intelligence sleep enhancement, non-invasive brain circuit control therapy system, and I decided to take this lovely picture on the left side there. So this is how it works, right? You have several electrodes and it will be connected to your smartphone, and somehow it monitors you in your sleep and monitoring various signals from your body. So this is what we see so far. We see technologies appearing. I believe there is much more than that because as usual, when it comes to patent analysis, the usual assumptions, limitations apply. Not everything that is out there is actually patented. It's only a sample. Not everything that's patented is also out there as a technology, but it is a quite relevant indication of what is actually happening. If we look at these patents, again, this is this little subsample that we identified of patents that combine AI and neurotechnology. It is growing a lot. There is, you know, if you look at the yearly count, obviously it's always going down at the last year because not everything is recorded already. But if you look at the cumulative numbers of the granted patents, it just keeps going up. Yes, and with this, I would like to thank you for listening, and you can scan again and download the report that we have, and yeah, let's go into the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Roman. So now I'm going to follow a pretty unusual way of moderating the session. That is, I will ask some questions, and I'll invite my experts. So I'm very happy to be here today with Lee, of course with Roman, and with Yuki Yasu. So I will put the questions, and then you answer to as many as you want. You tell me whether you want to answer at all. But the important thing is that we do snappy responses, and then, of course, if there are questions, we will take it. So don't feel free to just, intervene on each other, because I really think this is an open question. We have a number of open set of questions, and for the moment, nobody has the answer. If anything, we are starting to discuss the issues that really matter. So the first question I would like to put to ask to my expert here today is, what is that AI is bringing to neurotechnology, and what do you think that neurotechnology can bring to AI? So perhaps do we start from you?
Okay. First, thanks for the invitation. It's a great privilege for me. So I'm a computational neuroscientist by training, and I'm working on brain decoding and brain-machine interfaces. And the study of the image reconstruction is related to my work. That's actually what we started in 2017 or so. And the particular example was from a group following our approach. And I come back to this point later. But about your question, so okay, let me first talk about what neurotech brings to AI. Okay, so neurotech allows us to collect data very efficiently. So neurotech provide food for AI. Okay, so brain data can be just one modality for AI. So it can be useful in some way if you're clever enough to come up with some good path for application. And on the flip side, so what the neurotech AI brings to neurotech. So I want to talk more generally about the relation between AI and neuroscience. Okay, so current AI is based on deep learning, and the deep learning is inspired by neuroscience, the function and the structure of the brain, but in a very loose way. Okay, so there are a lot of differences, not biologically plausible mechanisms, but still, if you train the AI model with huge amount of natural data, that acquires representation that looks like brain. So we can directly compare internal signal of deep learning and the brain activity signal. So that's a recent innovation, realization. So this allows us to directly translate brain signal to AI. And from AI, you can create sound, image or whatever. And you can understand how the brain process real world information. For instance, our language is not processed as words and characters in the brain. So it has some latent representation, having very complex vector-like patterns. So, but that can be correlated with actual brain activity and between brain activity and deep learning. So that allows us to understand brain functioning without resorting to some very interpretable mathematical formulation or our verbal theory. So that's a great advantage recently we have seen. And now in the field is called neurotech, neuro AI. So I'm part of that.
That's great. Who wants to add? Lee, perhaps?
If I can jump in a little bit from the non-technical standpoint, I mean, I guess the way I would describe it is that the combination of the two is it's a real multiplier. And it's like a lot of what we see with artificial intelligence that, as the slides in your presentation indicated, that the multiplier effect can bring a lot of tremendous benefits when we think about people who have disabilities with the exoskeleton, people who may have cognitive impairments, that by combining the two technologies, we can really unlock a lot of good potential here for people who need it. But on the flip side is that if used in an untrustworthy, irresponsible way, the harms can also multiply. I mean, think about it. Some of the patents that big tech company has, if they're monitoring, as Roman was explaining to me earlier, in your earbuds, what's going on in your brain, and they're using that for commercial purposes, then we trigger all the harms multiplied, violating your rights to privacy, integrity, autonomously. So it really does kind of present a lot of challenges that we've been dealing with AI more broadly of, how do we create frameworks that enable society to capitalize on the great benefits that can come when properly used, but also mitigate against some of these harms that I think most like-minded nations would really find intolerable.
Roman, do you want to add, or should I go forward to the next question I have?
I mean, I think one point that I think most of the points have been mentioned, but I think like one interesting thing that could go from neurotech to AI is actually some of the ethical understanding, because neurotech and neuroscience, it's quite often a clinical thing. It has medical applications, and hence we have very strict regulations there that may actually, in this combination, inspire some of the regulations within AI, because people have been thinking about ethics in the medical area quite a lot. So, and then one thing that I haven't said before in the presentation is one area of technology that we found is neuromorphic computing. And this is quite interesting. It's a really recent thing. I don't hear people so much talking about it, but when you look into what's happening there, it's the biologically inspired chips, biologically inspired algorithms, and especially on the hardware side, potentially technologies that will be more energy efficient, that will be maybe more performant in several ways. So this is another interesting development that we see there of this inspiration going from neurotechnology or neuroscience towards AI and tech.
So as Yuki Yasu put it, we can already call it AI neuro or neuro AI, whatever, depends on the country you are and how you want to call it. Now, the question is, evidently this is a converted technology, but we have seen others in the past. We have seen the bio-nano converters. Now, the question to my panelists is, do you think this time is different with neuro AI or is not? And if it's different, why is it the case? Who wants to start?
I think in some respects it is different because when you look at where we are today, you look at the ways in which we can collect data through your earbuds, where everybody's wearing Apple Watches. I mean, the amount of data that we have to manipulate mine today is a lot greater. And then also, coupled with that is there have been so many huge advances in compute, and the compute keeps getting smaller. So I think where we are today, the potential of being able to use the data, the open source algorithms, so the algorithms become a lot more available, really opens up a lot of doors, both for great potential, but also to make sure that we don't allow those harms to happen. And I think it really does require a lot of vigilance, and commend the great work of UNESCO, and hopefully GPA can support as well on trying to come up with those ethical frameworks that enable society to capitalize on the benefits, but do it in a very safe way.
Who's next? Oh, the two gentlemen.
So yes, yeah, I agree with Lee. And so yeah, brain tech concerns, a lot of ethical issues, and that's very new. And so I think we can draw some analogy with gene. So gene and the brain has something to do with ourselves, our identity or privacy. But the gene technology or biotechnology has advanced a lot. But just looking back, about our personal trait or the biomarkers for psychiatric diseases, it's not well identified, even with huge number of genome-wide association studies, right? So, and it turned out that our personal trait is very complex. It cannot describe by a small number of genes. Okay, same thing may be true for the brain. The brain is complex, but as for brain data, it's very dynamic, unlike static genomic data. So it has the dynamic aspect and rich in complexity, but still, when I'm always looking at brain data, but if you look at them alone, it's just noise, right? So brain data makes sense only in the light of behavior or perception or actual functions. So yeah, we should keep in mind that brain signal alone is not something mysterious a signal which defines our mind and the behavior. It can be just a scratch paper which is useful for coordinating our behavior. So so in that sense, we shouldn't treat brain data something exceptional. It can be treated similarly as various kinds of behavioral data, which is currently used for the training of AI.
I mean, I will pick up on actually the gene aspect that you said. And, one interesting thing there is the regulation about what we are allowed to do with the human genome and what we are not allowed to do. They were actually passed quite some time ago before CRISPR came along and before these technologies were around. And this is actually quite interesting because from a regulatory perspective, just to add a little comment on what we said, and maybe this is what we need to do with these technologies now, because they are emerging. They're not entirely here yet. They're not entirely mainstream, and maybe this is what we need to do. But just to get back to the question on the the nano and biotech, and how is this convergence different? I think, well, first of all, AI is ubiquitous. I mean, look at the amount of people here today and all the applications we have seen. It is around. So if we now get a technology that attaches to something that is already all around us, mainstreamed in consumer goods, I think that puts a different dimension to it as compared to something like nanotechnology and bio, which mostly stays in the lab. Yes, I know there are some biohackers out there, but in their garages, but most of the time it is a costly activity. It is costly technology that requires a laboratory, that requires R&D. And so there is definitely a difference in terms of accessibility and cost there, where here, if Apple in 2 years comes out with AirPods that actually can record EEG signal, well, people will probably buy it. And it will be the Apple AirPods Pro Ultra something. I don't know. But
let's not make publicity one against the other. But going back to what are the challenges and the opportunities, really, in your mind, if you were to really think about the top 2 or 3, both the challenges that are put in forward by the convergence of neurotechnologies with AI and the opportunities, which one would they be? I'm asking this to everybody, actually. Please.
So I think, a couple of the challenges that really weigh on my mind, and we see the parallels in the general AI debate is the privacy. I mean, think about it. If you, the average consumer doesn't understand how they're giving up a lot of their privacy rights today. And if you're using a consumer device that's measuring all your biometrics, how do you should you even be getting informed consent to that? How do you make sure that the average consumer really understands what that consent is? Then, one of the problems we have in the United States is we have, in my opinion, what is too unregulated in terms of a data broker market. So it's not just the entity that's collecting the data, but then all these downstream uses, and it's being used by people for all sorts of scams. So that, the privacy implications are huge. And then, with AI, AI not only collects personal information, but it generates new personal information about you, because it can take data that maybe the earbuds collected and combine that with data that you may have voluntarily given to some other application and draw new inferences about you. So I think the privacy issues are huge. And then something else that has been of concern with regulators with just AI is the manipulation that, we're already seeing. And the Surgeon General in the United States has raised a lot of concern about the mental health crises that we're having in the US. And I know it impacts broader society and how these tools are becoming addictive. So when you start using neurotech, are you exacerbating addictions to some of these technologies? So, how can we allow the technology to go forward, but safeguard people's privacy and also protect the human integrity so we have more autonomy over how we make decisions and lead our lives, and we're not delegating that to computers, devices unintentionally.
Who's next?
Maybe try to say some positive things, and then we can go for. So, I mean, looking at some of these patents, I see there is a lot of amazing technology. In fact, if you think about people that are paralyzed and that may get an opportunity to control something like an iPad, right, and maybe combined with some of the augmented reality devices, suddenly can regain some form of existence that is better than what they have. This is amazing. If you look at some of the technology that is put out there to, create artificial limbs for people that had an accident of sorts. So all of this is quite interesting. And even, I presented the sleep optimization devices as something maybe evil, but there are so many people suffering from sleep apnea and other diseases or other conditions that are debilitating, that if we can use this technology this combination of technologies to find solutions, maybe even in a consumer space, that's fantastic, I think. We can see also in the data application, for example, for education. Imagine a scenario of tailoring curricula to the special needs of individual students because they are maybe neurodiverse or they just have a different way of learning. So they have a different, way of focusing at certain times, and then you adjust, the learning to this. That can be very, very beneficial. So I think there are some applications where you say, okay, this is fantastic, and you can maybe criticize it, but having, for example, a device for certain professions to make sure that the person in charge is not tired at the job may be relevant in certain situations, may be problematic in others. So, I think there are opportunities also in this.
So yeah, as a working scientist, I of course has a positive future in mind. Of course, having in mind ethical issues. So, but the most positive thing I have in mind is that this is going to be a next generation information technology. So far, we have smartphones, internet, but we had to communicate something inside your mind. You had to type or speak. So you have to move your muscles. But with this brain technology, you can bypass muscles or body. So the brain is directly connected to the world. And the brain has a huge number of neurons, but it's connected only through motor area, which is very small portion of the brain. So it's, our body is like a bottleneck for the brain, right? So, we could liberate, the brain. So by using brain-machine interfaces. But the concern I have, especially when we're discussing the ethical issues, is that people tend to talk about this issue as if all few SF-like technologies are already there, right? So, but we are struggling to achieve that goal, and some of them are just advertised and they exaggerated. There are a lot of misinformation, and especially using generative AI, you can create very realistic things, and usually realistic output is meant something true. But now there are a lot of things which looks realistic, but false. There are many such things. So yeah, the brain reconstruction is one of them, and I have trouble with many spurious reconstructions, just generated from AI, and people often do a lot of cherry picking. you ask AI to generate again and again, so that you get something looking good. So yeah, we should be very careful. And even experts, ethical law experts get deceived. And I feel, oh, they are so courageous, So, and even ourselves, just, if, I can be courageous, for kind of research progress outside my field. So it's very difficult to tell which is true, which is false, and especially in the age of generative AI. So maybe we should first face the reality and then move on to the discussion of ethical and the social issues.
To some extent, you are putting the emphasis on another possible link between neurotechnology and AI, which is what is actually achievable today with the neurotechnology that exists, and what are the fake news, the misinformation and the disinformation that actually AI can help replicate in relation to creating a myth about what can be done already. However, it is true that some of the applications are already there, and perhaps, let's say, as I was mentioning before, there are positive and negative options that different agents might want to be pursuing. But let's talk about one in particular, and these inequalities, because as we said this morning already, I think it is important, and this is why UNESCO is working on these issues, to put the accent on the ethics, that is putting people back at the center and put technologies at the service of people. And so inequalities is one of the key challenges that all governments around the world face: inequality of opportunities, inequalities of income, inequalities. Unfortunately, we can go with a list that is very long. But so in your mind, if you were to identify, thinking really from the perspective of neurotech and AI together, what are the key inequalities that this converging technology might augment? And why do you think that's the case? Would you like to start?
Okay. So, okay, let me try. So, okay, yeah, that's a difficult question. But yeah, of course, if there's no regulation, maybe rich people get the device first, and they may be able to augment their cognitive ability or even some emotional or moral ability, right? And but as long as it's like a small gadget, like, just wearing some cap or something, yeah, I don't think that's very serious. But in near future, maybe we can implant something in the brain and transmit all the signals, just remotely, you don't need any cable, visible, right? So in that case, people cannot tell whether, the person is wearing some brain device. So it looks like, even if it's augmented by some device, it looks like the person's intrinsic ability. So yeah, that's, if, that, completely wireless system and the implant system is realized, and it was, used exclusively by rich people, that could cause a lot of inequality.
Thank you. I see there is already a question, but perhaps let's have Lee,
Yeah.
and I don't know if Roman wants to jump on this, and then I will go to the gentleman, and then we'll continue the conversation.
I mean, I worry a lot about the fairness issues, and it comes in a lot of different ways. So, the old adage with AI is garbage in, garbage out. So if you're training the algorithm on data that's not representative of the patient population, you're going to get skewed outcomes. And if decisions are made based upon skewed outcomes, that could create real inequalities. And unfortunately, it's a problem that we all face, is that, the training data, the data sets used to validate models often are, don't represent traditionally underrepresented populations. So there's that risk. Then, something that's gotten a lot of attention in the United States, like the Department of Justice, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is we're already seeing AI being used a lot in the hiring processes. And the government agencies have reminded the community that we can't discriminate against people based upon disabilities. And AI is typically probabilistic. So if somebody is slow to respond, it may draw an inference and say, well, this person doesn't have the knowledge base in order to do this job, when it may actually mean that this person has some sort of a disability that is causing delays in their response, and you can't discriminate against somebody based upon the disability. And that's another area where I'm concerned that we could exacerbate inequalities in society.
If I can add, I think just really continuing in the same line, in the workplace, I mean, you could see scenarios, and I'm really just speculating from all the patterns that I've been reading, what is out there. This may become an application, it may not, but, its technology is described. Imagine a situation where you have really assessments at the workplace based on, some tests. I mean, I know in the US that in cases of all these personality tests, so now think about personality tests on steroids, also monitoring your brain data. That is potentially possible. And maybe devices that actually monitor the way how you work, and that may create inequalities or exacerbate inequalities for people that are not neurotypical or people that are marginalized already. So imagine a situation where maybe a person in a minority group is just like thinking slightly differently because of their background. And then, they just fall outside the normal distribution somehow. And it doesn't make a difference for the performance outcome, but somehow this is monitored and, marked as an abnormality. So I see different scenarios where we can get adverse outcomes.
So actually, I've seen two questions. Please, the gentleman here in the front. There is one in the back and then the third one there. Yes, yes. Wow, it's 5. Okay. one by one. So let's
Hello.
go for,
Yeah.
please.
Actually, I have
You
to.
can introduce yourself so that we know who we are talking to.
Yeah,
And then also, if you have a preference for the respondent, you signal it. Otherwise, you leave it to the end.
definitely. In fact, my name is Raju. I'm coming from DXC Technologies. I have developed a framework, in terms of AI and neuroscience, how it can bring some kind of a solution, in line with what is your agenda on human and society. I'll come back to that later if opportunity comes. My question is regarding human-machine interface. Already, Ray Kurzweil, 2029, he articulated very well. Singularity is near. That is the book, title of the book. And now also he re-emphasized recently, and he's talking about two-way data communication. Your mind can be connected to the cloud data. Cloud data will get your thoughts update, and those cloud can update your thoughts. Hope storage is sufficient enough. Any thoughts on this? That is one. Second thing is about neuroplasticity. Okay, neuroplasticity, that should be one of the topics. You have identified several topics you must have, but how you can relate that to the brain monitoring? The person is happy or not, stressful or not, unhappy? Is he getting more and more body or mind issues? And it may lead to psychosomatic disorders. So can AI predict such issues in future so that we can be our own psychologists, etc.?
Thank you very much. Very interesting question. Who wants to take the first one?
I think the first question was about brain uploading kind of thing, right? So yeah, I like that idea, but it's still science fiction level. So there's no concrete plan. There's no fundamental understanding that allows us to brain signal having same information in some different medium other than networks of the brain. But it's a fascinating topic, and many people are actually interested in. And also, although I mainly study about reading brain signal, but there are studies encoding stimulating brain in certain patterns to cause some perception and some particular pattern behavior. So that's being studied using animal models.
The plasticity.
Yeah, plasticity. Yeah, that's the important point. And it's also related to the first question. So brain changes, right? So the brain is a network of neurons, and it's connected via synapse, which changes with experiences. So even identical twins, and even if they are born with the same network, if they experience different things, their brain differ. Okay, so then why we can read out, the content of the mind from brain activity? That's the way we do is machine learning. We just put a lot of that brain data and associated the perception or behavior data. Okay, so we have to train this model for each individual. Okay, so that's why I emphasize that brain data alone doesn't tell anything, right? So, and also the pattern also changes over time, even within the same person. But there's some gradient of plasticity in the visual or motor area, or which are close to our input or output, to the brain, tend to be stable over time. But in the middle, related to more flexible thoughts, it's more flexible. So we have to take that into account too. So it's in reality, it's really difficult to identify the intrinsic pattern of some particular emotion just by looking at brain data. Okay, we have to do data science on brain data and behavior at current moment. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know whether my colleagues here want to add on
I'll
this.
add a little bit on the brain plasticity, and I think one interesting thought here could also be, I mean, if you think about some of the apps that we're using today and that kids are using today, right, that use the behavioral feedback, right? So you're swiping and watching some videos, for example, and you could argue that this actually triggers brain plasticity because you kind of get a type of an addictive behavior from that without any intervention, right, without any physical change or pharmaceutical change. So one could also argue that way, that we have, AI technologies that predict content that make you more addictive, which in turn induces brain plasticity in one way or another. And, that leads, when we think about regulation, into thoughts around, for example, things like gambling, right? This is a behavioral pattern that many jurisdictions tend to regulate because exactly of that, because it induces certain type of behaviors that we don't want people to develop without any technical intervention. And on the other side, you could also say, we do have things like neurofeedback, right? There is some gadgets, there is some consumer electronics that help people, to exercise more focus or be more mindful. Things like that exist today, and this is also right. The idea there is to induce brain plasticity, to repeated interaction with this technology and receiving this feedback on this phone. So you could also think, about some regulation of different apps by just thinking, okay, how much brain plasticity, how much, how much brain plasticity does this induce? Do people get addicted to? And then try to measure it that way. It would be an approach.
Lee, any thoughts on this?
I think as we think about trying to address some of these issues in the brain plasticity and how do we draw the line with putting products out there that may be entertainment, gambling in most jurisdictions for adults is an acceptable form of entertainment, but we run the risk when it crosses the line and becomes addictive. And, some of the things that we're developing in the AI space, and UNESCO has done great work with the AI agreement, is looking at it from a life cycle approach. And as we develop technology, doing impact assessments, what are the benefits that we're trying to capture? What are the harms? And trying to address that at the beginning of the life cycle in the design. So you can try to build the safeguards in to try to prevent some of those harms, and then embedding that really throughout the whole life cycle, through development, through implementation. And I think that's a way to, when we talk about the neuroplasticity with the gambling, it may be an acceptable application, or the addictiveness with social media, an acceptable application, but like, how do we put those safeguards in so the technology doesn't become harmful?
So there was a gentleman that now is standing. I remember the order, so I will call you in the order. So the gentleman, first it's this gentleman, and then it will be the one there, and then it was from here actually, and then I will go back there. brain plasticity, I'm learning. Now, don't start raising and lowering your hands because I'm not powered by AI. Go ahead.
My name is Aditya, and my background is natural language processing. So my question is, the example was that your thought is a machine learning matched to a picture. So, and that works well. So can we extrapolate this to say that human brain learns by association of concepts? So if we extract a larger set of activity from human brain, that will help towards creating what AI relies on a lot, which is knowledge graph. And that would be the first step towards broad AI or general intelligence from what is currently narrow AI, because all knowledge graphs are domain specific. So financial knowledge graph or engineering knowledge graph. So once we get to that gold mine, then we can make a general purpose knowledge graph so we can distinguish that when somebody says bat, is it cricket or is it animal?
So if I want to synthesize your question, it's like, is this leading us closer? Is this getting us closer to, general AI? That's what it is.
Yeah, actually, that's a kind of goal of Euro AI approach. And so far, we didn't have a good model, right? So we had for instance, a robot control, system, or say, some reinforcement learning. And so brain researchers, theoreticians working on brain functions tend to rely on existing physics or, engineering theories. But, that doesn't perform like humans. But now we have AI, which is capable of doing a lot of things, and especially language. So we really had no clue how to study language in terms of brain functions. But at least we have something, some artificial system which is capable of a lot of, perform great AI functions. So now people in our field are trying to relate actual brain signals and LLM internal representations. So, they give the same sentence or something to AI and the human, and how they correlate. And they try to find out some function which translate from AI to brain or brain to AI. And so they try to do that across different languages, trying to find some general mode of language or something. So that everything is in progress, and I'm looking forward to the future progress. But yeah, so that's what we are up to. So yeah, please expect to see.
But watch out
progress.
for what
Yeah.
is coming. Actually, that's the answer. The gentleman there. So I can see a lot of hands raised, and actually we haven't had any ladies so far asking a question. So I will do an exception that is like, we'll go first with this gentleman, and then we will have the lady there, and then we will move to the other gentleman there.
Thank you. I'm Sai
For
Krishna.
gender balancing a bit. Please go ahead.
I have a background in data science, and I started reading neural science, psychology, etc. ever since I had a breakup. So my introduction to neural science is not very academic. So please excuse me if I don't ask a very profound question. But in my understanding, again, we started using artificial intelligence in a way to replace humans, like that has been there to avoid human errors, etc. And now when we try to bring our learnings from neural science into artificial intelligence again, there are a lot of imperfections, like from my understanding in brain, like we have optical illusions and other imperfections of human brain, which have functionality otherwise, but not probably in a rational decision-making sense. So can I think of any such imperfections in a human brain that might have functions in artificial intelligence? Be it optical illusions, be any such imperfection.
Who wants to take this very simple question?
I can just try to, again, I'm an economist that works a lot with natural language processing that somehow fell into and has been reading all this neuroscience because of the UNESCO.
I'm guilty of this.
So yes, no, but one thing that we recently see, and this is the language processing papers, maybe some of you have read them, where we see people trying to understand, like if we look at a large language model, how does it store certain information. So is certain information localized? Are there certain layers and areas of neurons that are activated when a certain concept is generated in the decoder that is the LLM? So, and I know there are similar things being done in neuroscience, so like this kind of this locality of things that happens. We know, for example, if you have a brain surgery that is close to the temporal lobe area there, that they will actually see, will ask you to talk in all the languages that you speak, because languages are actually localized in certain part. And when you learn a novel language, this is actually where brain plasticity is happening, and you develop this thing. In terms of the imperfections, I mean, I think this is you would be the,
I don't know. Well, yeah. So yeah, there's localization in the brain, and but now recently people begin to doubt the localization of language area. It could be just an artifact of averaging across different subjects. So I don't know, I'm not familiar with this debate, but generally in the brain has very distributed representation. And even current AI, even language tokens are embedded into vectors, right? So, and the vector, just looking at vector, we cannot make sense of it, right? So, but that may be the case in the brain, okay? And people have, neuroscientists have been trying to find out interpretable, brain pattern or localization. But I suspect that was wrong. Okay, so we shouldn't expect something easily interpretable by ourselves. Okay, so but we can still translate or predict, from very seemingly complex patterns. Right. So that's our, recent realization.
Perhaps I'm going to say something very simple and something that we said this morning, but remember always that whatever gets into AI is as intelligent as the people that program it. So the likelihood that there is going to be a mistake is always there. Now, if that wasn't the case, you have to explain to me why, even in a setting that is very well defined, say check, where you have all the rules, all the possibility, and you can calculate exactly what you can do next, there's always someone losing it. And if someone is looking and someone is winning, it's because someone has done whatever mistake at some point that then leads to a certain consequence. So let's say for the moment, the possibility of having something perfect doesn't really exist. And therefore, that's why there are still a lot, of studies to be made about how to optimize processes, then to have reliable systems as well, because this is another issue that is at the stake. I mean, this is really, even if advanced along certain lines, it's still a nascent type of science that we have to assess the implication for from many points of view. So the ladies and then you. Yeah. I think I took by surprise, you see. Yeah. Moving the neurons. Yeah.
Well, I was not expecting my chance was there because this unplanned question answer session started. So that's I have 2-3 points which got collected with the conversation. So very first point which has been raised by Mr. Aditya. So the answer given by Dr. Yuki's, yeah, so a point on the localization and the language understanding. Well, I am Priyanka and I am from Ministry of IT itself, Delhi. And we are the one who is doing brain-computer interface and behavioral analysis here in India. So having done some of the work in this domain, so bit of the knowledge which I have gained in this duration. So one thing which raised by the person that the language understanding. So what we understood by this time that the localization of language that is in temporal lobe, left T1 position of that 1020 system. We are working on the system which is called subvocal speech identification using this brain localization. So we are trying to understand brain-computer interface by understanding the subvocal speech of the person. If I'm thinking about the water in my mind and the pattern of the water in the brain signal, we are trying to understand that. That too not only in the Hindi language, which is Indian language, English and the Malayalam. So these are the language pattern we are trying to understand. This is one of the part I wanted to introduce in this forum. That is a part we are doing. Second point of my concern is that about the personality and behavioral analysis. We are the one who is working in this domain. So the question raised by sir that about identification of the attention and the focus level and something different. So this is the domain which we are working. So this is not only about related to clinical or mental health related stuff. We are incorporating these changes into that forensic domain as well. So the behavioral analysis in terms of deception detection or kind of malicious abnormality detection. So this is what can be done, not only using the neurotechnology, using biosignals, we are extending it to some other biosignals as well, like ECG, EOG, and eye tracking, hand gesture, audio, and video. So this was my third point, that we are, when Miss Neuro is not only the one of the thing for in this domain, associated component, EOG, could be participating a factor for any kind of neurotechnology. That is one. Now my question, these were the discussion points. Now my question to Dr. Yuki Yasu. I could not understand a bit in between when you were talking about your session about Gen AI. I trying to understand if I missed something. You're trying to, what I understood, you were trying to say something about that image generation and reconstruction of the images. How you're relating that brain signal analysis with generative AI, means the where you're finding the bridge between these two.
Okay. So yeah. Oh, thanks for asking this question. Yeah, I can speak more than 1 hour on this topic, but yeah, actually, so okay, so we have brain and we have deep neural network to process visual information, and DNN, deep neural network, has a lot of layers processed, starting from pixels to more abstract, concepts. So brain has similar hierarchy. Okay, so and using that hierarchical correspondence, we can translate brain signal while you're watching something to deep neural network. Okay, now you have deep neural network internal representation. Then what would be the most likely input? Okay, to estimate this, we use generative model. So we can, explore, we can optimize in image pixel system, but instead we have, smaller dimensional, generative model. So input is just 1,000 element vector. We can estimate, we can, change it. And given random input, whatever, this generative model produce something look like real photo. Okay, we just keep updating this input based on the difference between brain decoded DNN state and the DNA response to the generated images. So we keep just repeating this process, and in that we use generative model. But so for that particular approach, generative model is not so crucial. We just use that as assistive, component. But so more recently, we have more research using full use of generative models like diffusion models.
Hey, over to this gentleman.
My name is Gaurav Tripathi. I am a market researcher. And as we started the session with you telling us about us being Avatar, it reminded me of the movie Avatar. And then Raju mentioned something about cloud connection, and it actually then reminded me of a dialogue in Avatar which said, we live in Pandora and Pandora lives within us, right? And she mentioned about some of the greater caution we need to have for the bias for the technology, right? We are in India as of now. Next year, we go into large election. 1 billion people go into elections. Thank God we don't have technology here, because I believe since the days of social media to what we have seen with AI, and now we are talking about neurotechnology, where are the regulators? I believe every time I think of these technologies, I believe the regulators are always behind in the game. So when we talk about this, what are the caution words for the regulators, especially when technology of this magnitude affecting, our daily choices? Where are we with the regulations? Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I mean, one thing we're just seeing across the board is, AI, neurotech, the development of the technology has so far outpaced the laws. And it's hard for, the regulations, the laws to catch up. I mean, many jurisdictions, US included, passing laws takes a long time. And then on top of that, even if we have really smart policymakers, as you listen to this conversation, these technologies are really hard. And, to get it right in terms of regulation, so the regulation is tailored to achieve the outcomes that you want is not an easy process. Like, so really what we're seeing in artificial intelligence and across the board, and I think what has to happen with neurotech is it's kind of an all hands on deck approach. We need to have a lot of different stakeholders talking with policymakers, trying to figure out what are the right solutions. We need to make sure that the laws and policies align with science and they can be implemented. You need to get diversity of viewpoint. One thing that I think arises in a lot of jurisdictions, the US is no exception, but oftentimes marginalized groups are not represented at the table. So we need to engage in a process that kind of brings everyone together to inform the laws. And then why the work of UNESCO, of GPay is so important is, we need to have some degree of harmonization across different jurisdictions because, the technologies don't stop at borders. And we have to respect that, India may have a different approach from the United States, may have a different approach from the EU. But if we can create some degree of commonality through standards, through tools, then we can try to come up with regulations, frameworks that can endure and that also can be adapted across different types of jurisdictions. So I think keeping the dialogue going is really important. And hopefully that will help the lawmakers catch up. And the solutions may not be laws per se or only laws, but laws in combinations with standards and other types of tools.
Allow me to add to what Lee has just said, and is that unfortunately the history is full of examples whereby technology is in the front and policy in the back, trying to run after it. So unfortunately for the speed of not only the AI revolution, transformation, call it as you want, but what is coming up through neurotech, this is not going to be an exception, if anything, the contrary. And that's why UNESCO has been so adamant, because very often people ask, well, why UNESCO? Because I'm sure that if I were to picture in your brain what you look, you see, by the time I say UNESCO, you see monuments, right? So it's cultural heritage protected by UNESCO. That's what you associate it with. Well, you have to know that in the word, so the ESC is like culture for sure, education is another big component, and science, both natural sciences and social and economic science. And let's say UNESCO is the part of the United Nations, which is kind of the brain, supposed to be the think tank of the UN. And the S for science actually goes in the direction of informing the policies that is useful for society. And that's why we are raising the alarm between brackets already now, because we see the developments, we see where they are heading to. We have been advised by many experts worldwide, and indeed what Lee is saying is extremely important. It has to be multidisciplinary, because I think all of you suffered from the consequences of the pandemic, where decisions were taken based on two types of specialists, the epidemiologists, and at times, that depends on the countries, the Ministry of Finance or the economics, because the problem is there a budget? Is not a budget. That was it. So no sociologist, no psychologist, no people taking into account the different needs, for instance, simply of men and women differently, nothing. And here we are now with the shadow pandemics, whereby we have huge amounts and growing amounts of mental illnesses that have been aggravated or triggered after the pandemic because of the condition we have been living in. So this is why we think it is important to work multidisciplinary and work across countries, because that's another thing. These are technologies that if I develop, I'm Italian, a home, and I said it's here, the technology doesn't know the boundaries. So it has to be harmonized across countries, because then that's the moment in which all the society can benefit. It can also learn from good practices. So there was the next one. No, the next one, I think it was there. Yes. And then I will go, yes. Guys, here it's a kind of a bet on the, it's a millisecond thing.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Soham Suryanshi. I work as a quantitative analyst. So my question is in regards to human augmentation. So what do you think the role of AI is in human augmentation? So when I talk about human augmentation, I'm not talking about helping a person who has some impairment or such. I'm talking about the general public or an average human being. I'm talking about human 2.0. So do you think there are any implications or scope of this thing happening?
You want to go? Who wants to go to this? I think we can all address this one. So
I think the question kind of highlights where the laws and the policies can help. I mean, is it a human augmentation? You know, if you go to the OECD AI principles, you look at the UNESCO work, it's all founded on we need to be human centric. We need to be able to use these technologies in a way that help humans and help humans achieve the goals. And I think that's where, you know, getting back to your points, as a society, we really need to weigh in and say, you know, we don't want this to be replacing humans. We don't want it to be used in a way that violates what we all consider to be human dignity and human rights, but we want to use it in a way that can helpfully, you know, benefit people in terms of augmenting capacity. And I think some of Roman's examples about when you think about people with disabilities and how the type of technology can help them. So I think that's really where society can come in and try to answer that questions, and hopefully we'll get to the right answers.
Maybe a short add-on to this, and you know, many times when I think only about AI, let's leave neurotech aside for a second. I'm thinking about the human capability there. So if you think about, you know, AI, let's say it's kind of like, imagine it's like a car, and now we have a car and it's much better in bringing you from one place to another. Should we all cut off our legs or just like not use them anymore because we now have this device that is much better at that? And so the question is it about the outcome of what you're doing? And this is a measure of augmentation, or is it about your innate human capability there? And I think when we bring some of these thoughts in the neurotech, so is it replacing what we should be doing as humans, or and it's great at doing it, or is it enhancing us and just making us better people? And I think this is the question that we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah, so as for the development of brain-machine interfaces, a realistic scenario would be first company like Neuralink develop a system for paralyzed people. Okay, they make a small hole in the skull and they implant several electrodes, and that's used for control of computer cursor or some robot hand. Right. But if it turns out, so that's kind of therapy, minus to zero, okay, for disabled people. But if it turns out that very useful, the patient can control cursor or, you know, click, you know, the smartphone much faster than, you know, normal people. Normal people may want to have that same implant. Okay, say you can type in 5 times faster than you do with your hand, you might want to have that surgery. Okay, Elon Musk says, I know it will be available and it will be as easy as LASIK in several years. So you might think of that. I think that's already augmentation, right? But the border is very, you know, thin, right? So, and yeah, I'm personally very excited about future, but yeah, we should carefully think about the, you know, potential outcomes caused by that change. Okay.
So I'm told that we have to close soon, despite the fact that we started more than 15 minutes later. So, and I have a lot of questions. So, but the two gentlemen here in the front have been waiting patiently. So please, to him the mic.
So it seems like I have waited longer than, like, you know, waiting for my exam results or something like that. Yeah. So hi, this is Pavan, and I'm an AI researcher and I'm an inventor and a lot of things, but still have two specific questions. The first one is, like, you know, earlier, like, you know, when you were discussing about the neural networks and human brain, you said, like, there's a difference between those two. So I just want to know the core differences between the human brain, the functioning of the human brain and the neural networks. That is one thing that I want to like, you know about. The second one is, like, what do you think the future of neuromorphic computing is?
Okay, so very specific and targeted question. Go ahead.
So neural network is said to be inspired by brain, but you know, so artificial neural network has a unit which, you know, perform weighted summation and thresholding, and the synaptic weights remembers, you know, all the things. Yeah, that's overall not so different from the brain, but for instance, there are many differences in details. For instance, synapses are not so fixed in the brain. It's very dynamic, okay? And also the way the neural network learns is basically back propagation in current popular models. But the back propagation is very difficult to implement in the brain. So it's very unlikely that that learning rule is performed in the actual brain. Although you can, loosen, relax the constraints and make it realistic, but it's probably wrong. Okay. So, but I emphasize that even though those architecture and learning rule may be different from AI and brain, the trained outcome and the trained model's internal representation can be translatable from AI to brain. So that maybe even though the details of learning rule is different, maybe that extracting some general statistical structure of the world, natural images. So that's there represented both in AI and the brain, similarly.
Let me maybe get very quickly to the other questions, and maybe then we'll take the rest over.
Very last question.
So as said, I'm an economist that somehow stumbled into this. And what I can tell you is just, I see the number of patents in this area, the number of publication has dramatically increased. So it indicates that there is a huge development in this area. If you read into some of these things which are done, is you see, I mean, we can expect more energy efficient chips, which is of course fantastic for the sustainability agenda. If we kind of, get a new type of chips and that may allow for other types of algorithms to run. People are now debating is transformer models and attention is this really what we have? And are we going to move away from there? And maybe these biologically inspired chips or these approaches will allow also for new approaches in AI. So this is all I can tell you for now, but you're very, very welcome to look at actually into the report. We published all the classifications in the appendix, and you can actually look up all of these patterns for yourself because it's very, very hard to find them, but we found them and we actually put all of this out there so you can have a look.
So now we will conclude this with a very, very quick example of brain plasticity. So whatever you wanted to ask, you have 15 seconds to ask, and we will have 15 seconds to answer.
Sure. My name is Amit Kumar Srivastava, and I'm one of Fujitsu distinguished engineer. So it's a Japanese company. So my question was actually around neurocomputing, like neuromorphic computing. And do you see that there are advancement ongoing, not from the paper perspective, but in practice? This is my first question. The second question quickly, like in neuroscience or neuroscience plus AI, do you see that this is going to help in maintaining public order as well? Because we talked about everything, but not the public order part, like how to, track criminals or maybe understand it and then so on.
So let me remind you about what are the prescription in the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, where social scoring is prohibited. So yes, of course, that's a possibility. In theory, you shouldn't do it. And countries, 193 member states, have actually committed not to do that, right? About advancement, let me just close with one point, and is that whatever you have seen so far, including what you're talking about, is actually a very small subset of what's happening in this domain. Because patent and scientific publications are just one of the representation, because imagine that there are a number of companies that are developing a number of services and products of which they don't detail any detail because that's a secret. And a production secret is an industrial secret. So what we are seeing there is actually really the kind of the tip of the iceberg. Underneath there is much more to it. But what we try to do that in that report is actually to show what is demonstrable and what is actually closer to the market. That is like it's something that you can stumble upon tomorrow. Because if it's patented, if it's granted, it means that it can be commercialized. So with this, thank you very much. It was a fantastic discussion. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and watch out for the work that we are going to do on neurotechnologies also related to AI. Bye. Thank you.